What's up guys, welcome back to See You Out There. Welcome to another how-to video. Today we're going to talk about the easiest way to fish docks with live shrimp. Alright guys, the easiest way to fish a dock with live shrimp. You can tie Carolina rigs, you can tie dropper loops, you can free line them, you can split shot them. There's a lot of ways to do it guys, but over my years on the water and my laziness, I have discovered that the simplest and easiest way to do it, lose less fish, is to tie your braid directly to a jig head. I know it sounds crazy. I know you're thinking I'm not going to get the bites. I've got a ton of footage here I'm going to show you of us doing this exact thing. I prefer these salty head jig heads. I prefer them in 1/8 ounce or 1/4 ounce, but I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. It doesn't matter what size jig head you use. You want to use a 1 ounce, obviously. 1/16, 1/8, 1/4, 3/8, anything in that size. Color doesn't matter. A good sharp point and a good solid hook is what matters most, and these salty heads provide that for me. So guys, the way to do this and the way to think about this technique is we all know that structure holds fish. Docks especially. In some parts of the world or the United States, docks are targeted almost exclusively, and in other parts of the Gulf Coast and the East Coast, docks aren't fished as much because some of these areas have wonderful marsh systems, they have wonderful oyster beds. Here in Texas, in the Galveston area, a lot of people don't focus on docks because we have such wonderful natural environment to fish. We have marsh ponds, we have marsh drains, we have oyster beds, we have all these wonderful things that hold fish, so we tend to overlook docks here. Back home in Florida, where it's just grass flats for miles and miles and miles, there's no oyster, there's no marsh, panhandle of Florida, we focused on docks because that's the only structure the fish have. Fish are attracted to structure regardless where you're at. Key West or Anchorage, Alaska, the fish don't care. They are attracted to structure for shelter, for food, and for a place to hide and hang out. The bait is going to gather around structure, so as the food chain goes, larger fish are going to gather around them. In the summer months when it's very hard in the middle of the day, fish will move back into those shady areas underneath docks and they'll collect. Another thing that you'll find is you'll have a row of 7 docks. Out of those 7 docks, there may only be one that holds fish, and it may always have fish on it. So if you hit a dock or two, don't get discouraged that you're not finding the fish. Keep moving and keep testing docks. The way I like to select a dock is I like to look for an older dock with a lot of barnacles, a lot of growth on it, and I like for it to be towards the deeper end of a row of them. If you look online, we'll show you here in just a second, I'll show you a row of docks, and I'll show you what I'm talking about, how some docks, proximity to deeper water, in my brain, makes it a better option for me. So I'll move in on that dock as opposed to the other ones where I would fish the flats in between the docks early morning, late afternoon. But midday, when those fish start seeking shelter, I'll focus on the docks that are a little bit deeper or a little bit older or provide a little more cover, and that's where those fish will be. So the way I fish these docks is I've got some really heavy tackle that I bought specifically for this. And by really heavy tackle, keep in mind, I mean for inshore fishing. So I've got some 7/6 St. Croix that I've put Pin Battle 3 4,000 size reels on, and I've put 30-pound Power Pro on them. The reason I did this is when I was trying to fish these docks and trying to pull these redfish and black drum and sheep's head out with my standard trout tackle, I fish a 7/6 medium light, 3000 series spinning reel with 10 to 12 pound Power Pro. If you take that 10 to 12 pound Power Pro and a 3000 series reel and you pitch that underneath that dock and Mr. Redfish eats it, you don't have the power, you don't have the to slow that fish down and stop him from, one, jetting out the other side and breaking you off on the pylons, or two, wrapping you around pylons and not being able to get him out. That's the reason I tie my jig heads directly to braid. I do not use a leader when I'm fishing this style, and the reason being is I need the abrasion resistance that the braid provides me. The 20-pound fluorocarbon leader, a 30-pound fluorocarbon leader, if it gets wrapped around that pylon and all those sharp barnacles and oysters, it's cut. That's just, we all know that, guys. And the fish don't seem to mind the leader not being there and the braid being straight to the hook. Am I missing some bites that I would get? I think I may be missing a few bites in there from the finicky fish, but 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to turn that fish when he eats anyway. So I'll take my 30-pound braid, tie my favorite knot, improved clinch, directly to the jig head. So what I want to explain now is how I like to hook the shrimp. What I've got here is some 1/8 ounce salty head jig heads. This is a pack that's already open from our last video last weekend. 30-pound Power Pro tied directly to salty heads jig head. I've got my shrimp imitation here, a DOA 1/2 ounce. And what I like to do, and the way I like to hook my shrimp, is I like to come in the last digit, the very last digit of that shrimp, and I like to hook him from the bottom, directly dead center of the bottom, and then I like to come out dead center on the top part. And then what that does is that gives me a weight forward design to pitch underneath the docks. I feel like I can get a good skip cast with it like that. I can pitch it a lot better underneath the docks. I can throw it as far underneath the docks as possible. When you're fishing docks, the trick is to get it as deep under there as possible. So rigging a live shrimp like this on that jig head allows me to be able to make those casts, skip it back in there. Once you throw your jig head under a dock, don't jig it, don't bump it, don't move it a whole lot. Let that jig head sink and let it sit on the bottom, and that shrimp's action trying to get away from that jig head and try to escape will attract the fish. Your redfish, your black drums, they're gonna be down on the bottom anyway. So if there's a school of 15 redfish sitting underneath this dock, they're down there just chilling, they're milling, they're on the bottom. And you pitch this in the middle of them, and that shrimp goes to flopping, guaranteed immediately you've got a bite. It does not take very long to identify if a dock is holding redfish or not. Back in my guiding days, I would put my clients on the bow, I would take the trolling motor and put it in the water. There are docks I knew that held fish, but I had to prospect new docks every day. Roll up, pitch it under, 2 or 3 casts underneath, let it sink to the bottom. Within about 5 minutes, if we didn't get bit, I'm moving to the next dock, moving to the next dock, moving to the next dock. And try all aspects of the dock, not just the end. If a dock looks fishy to you and it looks barnacly all the way back to shore, it's a foot, 3 foot, 5 foot, those fish can be anywhere in that. I think we all just kind of fixate on the end of the dock as that's where the fish have got to be. And I do the same thing myself. But keep in mind, anywhere in that dock could be fish. So if it's a beautiful day and you've got time, run the length of that dock and pitch it like you're bass fishing a jig. Pitch it underneath it. Let the shrimp hit the bottom, give him a couple seconds to do his thing. Nothing happens, reel it up, cast it to the next pylon, let it sink. Bounce those pylons from the end all the way to the beginning, and then bounce to the next dock. And what you will find is when you catch a fish on a particular dock, whether it's a 18-inch redfish or whether it's a 28-inch perfect tournament fish, you'll find that that dock and that position you caught that fish will typically hold fish. That's not a fluke that that fish is there. Do they school and do they move from dock to dock? Yes, they do, and they do herd and travel around feeding. But if they're sitting on docks, traditionally the docks will be the same. We've got docks back home, and I've found docks here that no matter where I go, if the fish aren't biting, if I hit these docks, they're there. If they're not biting there, they're not biting anywhere. And I've learned that from hitting these docks 10, 12, 15 times and learning where they sit on what spots. So don't go out tomorrow and go to the first dock in your neighborhood, toss a live shrimp on a jig head under it, wait 15 minutes, no bites, and say, hey, Brad's crazy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. You've got to prospect and you've got to learn the docks in your area. Start learning what worked. If you find a dock that's holding fish, what about that dock seemed fishy? Was every dock around it 2 foot? This dock was a little bit longer and it was 5 foot at the end. Were all the docks around it brand new? Did they have plastic covering the pylons that didn't allow for oyster or barnacle growth? Was the pylon old and rickety, built in 1952 and was just one big giant barnacle? Start triggering on what was holding fish, and then you'll start noticing other docks that match that criteria, and you'll start to develop a way to pick docks to fish. What I want to do right now is I'm going to zoom in on Google Maps really quickly, and I'm going to show you an area that I have never fished, but is an area to me that looks like it sets up beautifully for what we're talking about here. And I'll show you the docks that look more like I would fish them early morning, and then the docks that look like I'd want to fish them midday. So let's jump into that really quick. Here you can see a shoreline, and on this shoreline we can see a lot of residential docks. And the first thing I notice about these docks is I notice the flat between them all. You can see here there's these big giant beautiful flats. Looks like a little bit of grass, a little structure, some riprap, I love rock walls. Redfish love rock walls because of all the crustaceans that get in there. And as I look at this string of docks, the things that get me the most excited about these, I would not start on these. These are shallow. I would fish in the morning. All this in the morning I would fish. All this in the morning. In the afternoon, this is where I'd be pulling my skiff, throwing plastics, throwing topwaters. This dock here, if you'll notice, the proximity to deep water is right here. This dock sticks further out into the deep water. This dock, maybe this one. This dock right here, these two, these are the two that get me the most excited. If I was going to fish this string of docks, this is where I would start. And I would roll up on the outside of this, depending on the wind. If the wind's this direction or the wind's this direction, I would eye pilot down bow to it. Or I would power pole down back here away from it, and I would pitch underneath this dock, underneath this portion here, as far as I could. And actually, I would pat under here as close as I could, and this one as well. But this would be my first and favorite dock that I would hit. This dock here, same thing, large cover, plenty of shade for them to get under, and very close to deep water. Here's the deeper water right here. This is one that I would be very interested in. So as we move down, I would say no. Here, look at this one. This one's right on the drop off, right where it gets deeper. You can tell that the deep water hits the end of this one here. I would definitely pull in here and check this one out. Definitely check this one out. Oh yeah, and all three of these right here. You can see here the deeper water comes in closer to the shore. So it's not as big a flat as we have there. And in this situation, all three of these docks are in what appears to me to be deeper water. So these three here, we've got lights on them, which means these people have lights on at night, which means they draw bait in here, which means that bait lives underneath these docks full time. That tells me right there that this is a prime area. I'm actually going to change my vote from this one, and I'm going to change it to this right here. This right here, based on just Google Earth, looks like there's some oyster on the shallow flat across the way, a deeper navigable channel, which means there is forage and flat over here, deeper water, and then we've got a shady, sheltered area right here, guys. So this is how I identify where I want to fish when I'm fishing docks, and this is how I find my docks. Now, when I do go fish this spot, which I'm pretty sure I will, it's not too far from where I'm at, I'll fish this thing early in the morning, and I'll fish every bit of this flat, and I'll pole this or I'll trolling motor it based on depth, and I'll look for redfish, I'll look for trout, look for stingrays, blue crabs, and I'll get a lay of the land on this place early on and figure out if I ever want to fish it again. With a good leeward wind or a good wind out of the south here, it's blocked, it's isolated, a good sunny day you could see, I would be able to tell very quickly if this area was any good, and then I would come back midday, 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock, right in that area, maybe when there's not a major feed on and the fish are held up. Then this is where I would give it a try, guys. Okay, let's get back to our video. All right, guys, so as you can see, it's not a science, it's not complicated, it's just learning the water, learning the docks, exploring your area, doing your research on Google Earth, getting out on the water, and taking what precious little time we have on the water. You know, with a full-time job and kids and ball games and everything else, we can't always spend every weekend, all 3 days, 2 days on the water. So I know it's difficult to get out there on a day that is the nicest day you've had where the wind's not blowing and you've only got 1 day to go. Mama said you can't go 2 days this weekend and then go prospecting. But I promise you, if you'll put the time in and go find the docks in your area, whether you're in South Florida, whether you're on the East Coast, or you're here on Galveston, prospect your local docks. And I think you'll find that straight braid to a jig head with a live shrimp, a pin a croaker, pin a pinfish, you can pin any of those on here as well. Past crabs down in South Florida, it all works. This is just a guaranteed way to prospect docks and find fish, guys. This is probably the easiest way to fish docks consistently and successfully, is salty head jig head with a live shrimp. All right, guys, there you have it. Another tackle tip today. The easiest way to fish docks with live shrimp. I hope this helps somebody out there. Guys, if this helps you, get down in the comment section, let me know. I love to hear feedback from you guys that my tips have helped you. We've heard some in the past, and it really makes these videos worth the time and effort when someone reaches out and says, hey Brad, I watched your jetty video. We put it into practice at the jetties. We had a great day. Thank you very much. That's why I'm doing this, why I share this knowledge, guys, for you. And I love the positive affirmation that I hear back from y'all that it's working. Thank you so much again for everything. Thank you for all the support. It's springtime. Corey and I are back on the water every weekend. We've got a lot of fun stuff coming up. Again, this is the push for 10,000 this year. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for all the love, all the positivity. We appreciate everything, guys. Don't forget, like, subscribe, get down in the comment section, drop us something. It helps the channel grow. And as usual, we'll see you guys out there.